Okay guys, so now what we're going to have to do is program the Coolrunner. I like to do this before we actually solder it to the board, just so it's easier to plug in and connect to the computer. So essentially we take our Coolrunner chip, we take this cable, which should come with either, I don't think it comes with the Coolrunner actually, I think it comes with the JR programmer or Nand-X. You plug this into your Coolrunner and the other end into your JR programmer. So on the Coolrunner you have a little switch here. Make sure that's set to PRG for program, and if it's switched to the left, which it might be by default, that's normal. That's when it's actually glitching, so you want to set it to PRG for program because we're programming the timing file to it just now. And then of course plug the other end of the JR programmer into your computer. So I will go over to the computer and show you how to program the Coolrunner. Okay, so now what we're ready to do is program the Coolrunner. Now, in normal circumstances, if we were doing an RGH1 or an RGH2, we would select glitch 1 or glitch 2. So select glitch 2 anyway, because all the software stuff is going to be glitch 2, RGH2, as if we were going to do an RGH2. But on the hardware side of things, we prep the Coolrunner for RGH1. So the problem is normally you would, if you're doing RGH1 or RGH2, you would click Program Coolrunner, and then you would select one of the preset timing files that are listed here. We're doing the RGH1.2 hack, which is a relatively new and unheard of hack, and therefore there are no preset timing files in JRunner yet. There may be in the future, but right now there's not. So what we're going to do is add our own custom timing files for RGH1.2, which I have here, and I'll provide them in the description. In order to add your own custom ones, you have to click on Advanced in JRunner, and then click on Custom NAND/CR functions. You're going to select XSVF, which is the timing file, and then you're going to open up the timing file. So there's a bunch of different timing files here that will work for Coolrunners and Matrix and CR3 lights and whatnot. So the thing with RGHing is it is literally a trial and error basis to see how fast boot times you can get. So essentially we're just going to pick like the top one here, and we're going to program that. If it gives us slow boot times, then we'll try the next one, and then we'll try the next one, and then we'll find out which one's the fastest. Every Xbox motherboard's different, so you know, it's never one the same. It could be any one of these timing files could be better for your specific console. So we're just going to have to try all of them and find out which one's the fastest for our motherboard. So I'm going to pick the top one here and then click Run, and it's going to start programming the Coolrunner. You can see the progress bar. That is programming the Coolrunner. When it does that, the JR programmer should be flashing. So when it's doing that, the lights should be flashing, and when it's done, you're done. You've got the timing file programmed onto the Coolrunner now. So all we have to do is unplug it, and we're now ready to prep the wires on it and get it ready to be installed on the console. Okay guys, so now we have to prep the Coolrunner. Now in order to do that, this is the hardware part that I was talking about. We need to set this up for RGH1. Now I'll put images up on screen of what you have to do with a Coolrunner. If you're using like a CR3 light, I don't believe you have to do this, but for a Coolrunner you do. And for the Coolrunner, you can see that on that image you have to bridge JP. So it says RGH2, you leave it open, if not it should be bridged. Normally there would be a resistor on that point, so you're going to have to desolder the resistor and bridge JP. And then there's also further down, you've got 3 and 2 that need to be bridged right there. There's normally a resistor, again at 3 and 2, that you have to remove, and then you'll be able to bridge those 2 points. So you can see I've done it here. You've got 3 and 2, I've already gone and bridged this. They're such small points, I didn't really think of recording me soldering it. And I had a hell of a job with JP, which is why it looks so messed up. I couldn't bridge it. I tried everything, I could not bridge it. So what I ended up doing was getting a piece of wire and cutting it so that it was just small enough to bridge JP, and then, you know, soldered them down at both ends of JP. So it's bridged, JP is bridged using a piece of wire, when normally you would just flow the solder to bridge it together. Okay, so now what we've got to do is prep the points for all the wires that are going to be soldered. We're going to be doing 3 volt, ground, A, B, C and D for RGH1. So we're going to go ahead and prep that. Right, so now that those points are prepped, what we're going to do is essentially just get the wires attached now. Again, you could do this once it's on the console, but I just think it's easier to do it while it's off the console on its own. It's easier to attach the wires right now, and then we can stick the Coolrunner on the console and then solder the other ends of the wires to the points on the console that they need to go to. And following the diagram on screen, I'll put it up on screen, this is on JRunner as well. In the images section for RGH1, or well CR wire install, you'll find these images. So we've got the 3 volt wire, which is the first one we're going to attach. So we're going to do 3 volt, ground, PLL bypass, STBY_CLK, the post out and the CPU reset for these different points. So I'm going to start off with the 3 volt wire. Okay, so next is the shielded cable. Now, the shielded cable is meant to be... Right, okay, so this is... So, the white one on the diagram is meant to be a double shielded cable, a massive thick cable. For RGH1.2 you can't use that cable because the point we're using to reset the CPU is not the normal point that you use on RGH1 or RGH2. So what that means is we need to use alternatives. So I've got 2 blue wires. I'm not sure which ones are going to be long enough, so I may have to change out the wires. But okay, so for D, the CPU reset, you can just use a normal wire from the slim cable. The blue one from the slim cable will do for that, if you don't have the double shielded one. In fact, you don't need the double shielded one at all, but it's recommended to have it. But then for RGH1.2 I don't see how you would really use it unless you can still use the old reset point, which you might be able to still use. Other than that, just use a normal wire, and that's us got everything prepped. Now, another thing I'm going to do, this is just me, is I'm going to get rid of this orange wire, which is this is the point I really hate, and it's the CLK point, which is soldered right next to a resistor on this tiny pad that often doesn't even have any solder on it to begin with, and it's covered sometimes, and you can't even put solder on it sometimes. It's really awkward. You have to do it on the resistor next to it. So there's actually an alternative point on the back of the motherboard that you can use instead of the normal point for CLK, and I think I'm more comfortable with doing the one on the back of the motherboard instead of this one. So I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to attach another blue cable from this blue cable is from the RGH2 hack. So it comes with your Coolrunner wires, a spare blue one that you're not going to be using. So I'm going to solder that to B because it needs to go to the back of the motherboard. So that's all our points prepped. So we've got our 3 volt, we've got our ground, we've got our PLL bypass, our standby CLK 48 megahertz. This point is the one I'm using the alternative point on the back of the motherboard for. Then we've got our post out and our CPU reset, which I'm also using a normal wire for instead of the shielded cable. Okay then guys, I've got my motherboard back in front of you now. So what we're going to do is now put our Coolrunner, now that we've prepped everything, the Coolrunner needs to go on just above the AV port. So we take our little double-sided strip that comes with the Coolrunner, face down, stick it on the AV port, like that, and then peel off the next side, and then stick the Coolrunner on with the wires facing towards where the fan would be. And trust me, once it's stuck down, it ain't coming off. So just make sure you get that on there right. And we're now ready to solder the ends of these wires to the correct points on the board. Alright guys, so what we're at now is the actual, kind of the hard part is actually soldering all the wires for the Coolrunner onto the board. I've already gone and done the back of the motherboard. I'll flip it over once we've done the front of the motherboard and show you where every point is on the back, and I'll of course show images on screen to show you guys where to solder what wires to, what points, and all of that. So what we're going to do first of all is do the 3 volt wire here. Now the 3 volt wire has been done, we have to go ahead and do the ground wire. So let me zoom out a little bit. So the ground wire, we're going to ground it on this little point here right at the AV port. And ground it on that point, and that's all the Coolrunner wires done. Now obviously I just showed you me soldering 2 of them, so I'll go to the back of the motherboard and I'll show you the other points that need to be done on the back. Okay, so we're looking at the motherboard from the back where the AV port is, just so you get your bearings. And coming up here, this is our alternate point for CLK, which is FT2R2, and the image is up on screen now. So you've got FT2R2, that is your alternative CLK point that you can use. You can see I've got it there. I find that's easier to solder wires to than the front of the motherboard, the normal CLK point. I think this one is a lot easier. So there's that one. Then you come over to your PLL, which is A, I believe. PLL is right here. Again, image will be up on screen for PLL. That's quite a difficult point, it's very, very small. You should be using a precision tip for that. I use this one, it's a bit oxidized, but you can see I use that tip for these points because it's really, really precise. So you should probably have a precision tip for those points. Then you've got your CPU RST, your CPU reset, which is right here. Again, I'll see if I can zoom in. So you can see that soldered there. And the CPU reset, again, precision tip for that one, it's a very small point. You can get to it without having to take the X clamp off, especially if you use a precision tip, of course. So again, image up on screen of where that is, the same image as before, it's the blue RST wire there. And we have got our post out, which goes to FT6U1. So you can see there, that's FT6U1, not FT6U7 like RGH1 and 2, FT6U1 right next to it. So those are all the points for the back of the motherboard, and I didn't want to show me soldering them because I took a while to solder them because I wanted to make sure I did it right and with a precision tip. And the points are so small I wouldn't be able to even get a proper zoom in on them with this camera without it going out of focus. So yes, so 4 points altogether on the back of the board, and then just 1 point or 2 for, well, 1 for ground and the 3 volt for the front of the motherboard. So what we're going to do now is we're going to re-hook up these wires back up to our JR programmer and hook it back up to the computer, and from there we're going to program the Ecc Image, which is Zell. We need to boot into Zell in order to get the CPU key from the console. So just to recap, make sure you apply power to the console but don't turn it on. When you apply power, you should now see if you successfully soldered your 3 volt wire, then you will see the red light on the Coolrunner showing that power has been applied to that as well. Rehook up your Nand-X or your JR programmer wires to your JR programmer and rehook that back up to the computer, and you will be ready to write the Ecc image to the console. Okay guys, so we are now back onto the computer and we've got JRunner open here. So what we're going to do is now we need to essentially create an Ecc image, which is just Zell. It's the first 50 blocks of the NAND. It's only going to write 50 blocks, but it is going to overwrite your NAND. So what I would recommend doing is backing up your NAND dumps. See the output folder where your NAND dumps are stored. I just copied them into another folder called backup Jasper 16 megabyte. Just because if you lose those NAND dumps after you've written the Ecc image, you are screwed. You can't really get back. The console is just done at that point if you lose your NAND dumps. So I recommend making a backup of them, maybe on a separate drive or a USB drive or something, because you never know. It's just good to keep a backup of these things. So what we're going to do, it's detected my JR programmer. We're going to create the Ecc image for a Jasper 16 megabyte, and it's going to create it, and then we're going to write it to the NAND. So you can see it's writing to the NAND, and once it reaches 50, that will be it done. The Zell is only 50 blocks. So it's writing right now. 40, and that's it, done. And that's Zell. We now have Zell on our NAND. Our NAND does not have a normal dashboard on it now, it just has Zell, which is what we're going to try and use to get the CPU key. So, once again, I'll go back to the hardware side of things and show you what we're going to have to do now. We're actually going to have to actually boot the console up now and hope that it glitches. Hope that our soldering was good and it's going to glitch. So that's the end of part 2. Part 3 will be linked on screen and in the description. You can go ahead and jump straight to the next part. Unfortunately, I couldn't fit it into 2 parts. I really wish I could, but I couldn't. Unfortunately, there's just too much to cover. So yeah, part 3 will be linked on screen and in the description. I'll try and make sure again that I upload it on the same day as this part so that you're not kept waiting. You can just go straight to the next part. So, and that will definitely be the last part, part 3. So yeah, once again, a huge shout out to Monoxide for making this tutorial possible. He helped me out a lot. I was emailing him back and forth, asking for help and advice on this tutorial. So he is a hardware modder in the UK. He sells consoles, retail consoles, RGH consoles. He's got a RGH/Jtag shop on Facebook that you can go and check out if you want to buy a console that is already reset glitch hacked in the UK. You can buy it off him. If you find this tutorial too complicated, then that's definitely a good option. He's also got a retail shop on the techgame.com, which you can go and check out for buying a retail console, and you can buy a specific Xbox motherboard from him. So if you want to have the best Phat Console to reset glitch hack, like a Jasper, then you can buy a Jasper console from him, and you will know you'll be getting a Jasper console for sure. So that is pretty awesome. You can go ahead and do that. So go ahead and check out his retail shop. And yeah, if you liked the video, make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, comment if you have any questions, and I'll see you guys in part 3. Yeah.